Hello, in this video I want to briefly talk about the main user interface. So the first button right here in the upper left, this recenters your settings window. So if you're switching from multiple monitors to say just a laptop and you leave your settings off screen, this button will recenter it and solve that issue. The next drop down is the desktop versus mobile. I recommend you use it on desktop primarily, even though Google is mobile first indexing. What they show in the mobile results tends to be a reduced set. So you actually get your full scope of competition in general on the desktop side. And so your best tuning standards come out of desktop. So even though Google is mobile first indexing, it's still desktop first SEO. Then in the search engines, the two primary things you'll be using are Google and Google Maps. So Google Maps will get your Google business profile factors. I recommend that you still use the Google one for figuring out your on-page strategy by page. The main reason for that is the Google Maps search results. All those websites are what people configured in their business profile. Tends to be the home page instead of the most relevant page on the site. So you actually get the right page to tune using the regular Google search, but you can get the profile factors with maps. So just be aware of that. We're currently looking for a new API provider for Bing. So that's currently offline, but should come back in the near future. Normal variations and broad variations. So variations are the words that Google is making bold in search. The normal ones appear in the organic web results. The broad ones also include the ads and the featured snippets. The only time you'd want to use the broad ones is when you're tuning for a question where the answer will have a featured snippet. In those cases, the broad is applicable, but really 99% of the time you just want normal. Country and language, self-explanatory. You can localize optionally within that country. And then your search terms here. The variant keywords, those are the words that Google makes bold in search. I recommend that you leave those alone. Then we have the search result table populates here, and there's a column for track and competitor. Let's go ahead and put in a search. Okay, so this is searching. I just want to populate some data here when I explain these portions. And we'll go ahead and move this over. Okay, so now we have some data to talk about. The track column is where you specify which page you want tuning advice for. So we're saying, give us advice on how to tune this page in yellow. Your competitors, you can have any number of competitors, those are the pages that the advice will be based on. So Cora is going to figure out which factors are important across all 100, but it's going to only give you advice based on your chosen competitors. And so that's how that system works. In the deficit strategy, this is how you sculpt the kind of advice you get back. So the way you read this is for any factor we measure, I want the tuning recommendation to be the maximum factor measurement from our chosen competitors, 1, 2, and 3, or the page 1 average, or the shared average. Whichever of those things is largest becomes the goal. And so that's how that works. Don't use average, because when you tune for an average, you end up on page 2. That's systematic detuning. the standard deviations, turns out they are guided over optimization. So if you want to have a controlled way to exceed the recommended amount, those would be your option. All right, so with that, there's number of searches. I recommend you keep it at 5. This feature is how we tune out Google's random chaos. And so if you use one sample, you can get data problems in your reports. I recommend using 5 if you have a particularly tricky keyword, maybe as much as 10, but there's diminishing returns. All right, so once you have everything set up, perhaps the web page you want to have rank isn't here. We can put in a web page. So I'm going to use the SEO Tool Lab homepage. And we can use add to end of results. And what that'll do is it'll force it to be the last result at the end. And that way you can have any page you want in the analysis so you can get advice for it. Another interesting trick is if you're making a web page from scratch and you just want to know what to do for a page from scratch, you can put in a blank page, and I keep one on the SEO Tool Lab website called blank.html. And let's force that. Give it a second to load. And there we go. Now I have a completely empty document, and this will give us a roadmap for what a blank page would need to do to rank. And so this is a clever trick if you're creating new pages, new websites, and you just want not a reference example from where you're currently ranking, but a reference example from a complete blank page. And so that's another good trick. So once you are ready to run, you just hit the Get Data button, and that'll kick off your report. It'll typically take between 5 and 15 minutes, depending upon how much firepower your computer has. So that's all for this video. In the next video, we'll talk about using the data.